How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself and in no instance bypass the discriminations of reason? You have been given the principles that you ought to endorse, and you have endorsed them. What kind of teacher, then, are you still waiting for in order to refer your self-improvement to him? You are no longer a boy, but a full-grown man. If you are careless and lazy now and keep putting things off and always deferring the day after which you will attend to yourself, you will not notice that you are making no progress, but you will live and die as someone quite ordinary. Epictetus. And we're back. Yes, I don't really have an excuse for missing a week. I think it was just a week. The Germany trip was well documented. It was spectacular. I was back for a short stint, and then in a reel that I threw up on Instagram, showed that I was on a family trip in Durango, Colorado. We skied Purgatory and Telluride. It was excellent. And then have just been coming home and trying to get things back in order here since landing. Yes, we did indeed land safely. We took air buses there and back, thank God. And that's really the first topic here. But no excuse for missing a week here. I'm going to try getting back on schedule after posting this episode late, as well as I'm filming this now, St. Patrick's Day night, evening. So happy St. Patty's Day to all who celebrate. Hopefully you all celebrate. Got after it pretty good last night because I didn't feel like getting stupid on a Sunday. But that appeared to be the day everyone got after it. All the bars had lines out the door. All the tents were outside today, and people were under them. So that was always cool. Always cool to see, especially when the weather's bad. Awesome to still see people getting after it. Without further ado, I figured I would go through some of the headlines that shot across my desk in the prolonged period in which I had not created an episode. Then figured I'd share some commentary on that, as I usually do. And at the end, I wanted to look at, or at least peer into, the T-Rex Arms review of the Palmetto State Armory JAKL, because as someone who owns a JAKL myself and has shared opinions about it, bad and good, I thought the review was very well done. I thought it was very interesting, their findings, so I figured I'd share my thoughts. I don't have 5,000 rounds through it yet. I don't even have 2,000 rounds through it yet, but definitely more than 1,000. So we'll share my thoughts, as a podcaster does, whether you like it or not. And then I'll get into a new project that is in the works, as well as some things that have happened in the community here locally that I really want to call out, because they're just really cool shit. So anyways, it's now official. The Boeing issues, very much like the headlines about the illegal immigrants coming in and unfortunately slaughtering law-abiding citizens, or brawling with police and getting a slap on the wrist, or not even being pursued at all. They're too many to count. And even the examples I have listed here to go over are already out of date. Like the wheels quite literally falling off, the rudder control pedals failing, the whistleblower killing himself. Like, we all know these headlines. I won't, for the sake of everyone's time, I won't dive into each of those. The whistleblower one being the biggest, obviously, but one that isn't or hasn't been talked about as much as the whistleblower issue, as much as the security camera footage being deleted of the work being done on that Alaska Airlines door panel that blew off. Crazy, by the way, how I haven't heard anything about people getting pursued by like DOJ or whoever's investigating it for criminal like tampering of evidence or whatever the fuck, because there's no way that's legal or cool or allowed in any universe. But the one headline, an article that came across my desk, read, Boeing fails 33 FAA product audits. And 33 out of the 89 audits that were performed by the FAA, Boeing completely flunked. The article goes on to cite that the Spirit Aerosystems, the supplier that the whistleblower had cited in his testimony, his reports, for their parts showing many defects, were cited for failing 7 of the 13 tests that were administered. So things are looking to line up pretty damn well with what the whistleblower was saying, and I hope to God Boeing gets absolutely crucified and they never recover or see the light of day again after this, because fuck them. There was also another article. I just started to see it floating around the internet yesterday, a little bit today, but I think even before the Alaska Airlines door panel blew off, a Boeing executive walked off of a flight he was on once he saw that it was a 737 MAX. I think I read that right. That was just a headline. I didn't actually read the article. But apparently he was well aware of the issues and wouldn't fly on one himself, is what the article alleged to state. So I'm going to try hunting that down, and I'll throw it up on the screen. If your audio listeners, pop open the video real quick. There's video on Spotify and on YouTube. If you're in the car, just Google it when you get home. I don't know. And on a similar note to Boeing United, anyone who believes in the DEI crap, actually, on that note, James Lindsay was on the Redacted Culture Cast and the Joe Rogan Experience, which was a huge win for our boy Forrest, getting a JRE guest on his show like shortly after they were on JRE. I think that's pretty spectacular. So anyways, the next article was that there are more women working from home than men. Interesting. Can't wait to hear how this bleeds into the glass ceiling and wage gap debate. But anyways, one of the reasons that was cited as to why more women are able to work from home than men is that more women are educated and hold degrees than their male counterparts. And that's because we pushed, this just broad equity, equality standard for all people, regardless of background, sex, whatever. And regardless of how much sense it actually makes for the benefit of a society. And so now there's that imbalance, and this now, let's call it inequity for men who now aren't able to work from home as much as their female counterparts. I can't wait to see the movement that grows for that. So do what you will with that knowledge. Next time someone wants to bring up the wage gap, fluffy BS numbers and other crap, because I guarantee Cheryl's working from home and Steve's riding a mower or under a car or fixing Cheryl's sink even. I know I'm in the office 5 days a week. That's just how my company operates. But I do think the norm is starting to swing on that sort of remote work, return to office mandate sort of thing. I'd say more people are in the office out of the work week than they are from home. And then those who do have the privilege to work from home are definitely working from home less than half the work week, I would say. Just based on some of I don't have numbers in front of me, but from what I've been reading, what I've been gauging, labor market's pretty tight. If you're looking for a job right now, it's not really good or a good position to be in, unfortunately. And so employers can ask and get whatever really they want. So you're probably going in the office if they have to pay you. And if you don't return to the office, if you are working from home, it's a very easy, excuse me, it's a very easy line for them to draw just to can your ass and cut costs during a very hard time, depending on the industry. The TikTok ban.
This is not an attempt to ban TikTok. It's an attempt to make TikTok better. Tic-tac-toe. A winner. A winner.
That's the next thing on my list here. It's a tough one, right? It's a gray area because, boy, do we all fucking hate TikTok, and the app objectively is a nasty just piece of work. It's obviously straight Chinese propaganda, censorship, and surveillance engine that is very clearly has a very strong grip within the United States. And so objectively, I would like to see it completely wiped off the face of the earth. However, the way in which our government is trying to do it is going to set a very unfortunate precedent if it does pass. But essentially, if they're able to just circle up and say, yep, we banned TikTok, they can just circle up and make up any excuse to ban any application, any website, because I do believe the bill says website. They can just shut down, cancel, ban anything that they deem is inappropriate, that they deem is dangerous. And we all know how actually dangerous using the guise of community safety or to prevent people from harm or from danger, is when you look at social media and the way Meta and Google enforce censorship, all in the name of community safety. You can't talk about airsoft, you can't post a Nerf gun, but your toddler, hopefully not your toddler, if they're an iPad kid, fix that shit immediately. But your 10, year old whatever can jump on Instagram and just see full frontal nudity now. So they're it just goes to show that it's just an absolute fucking joke. Safety doesn't mean anything to these people. It's just the guise, it's the lie, it's the way for them to just straight up enforce First Amendment infringements, to suppress ideologies or thoughts or ideas that don't align with theirs. Simple as that. So the TikTok ban, as much as I'd like to see TikTok completely nuked and never to return, not like this. That's just where I stand on it. Some other means, hopefully. The AT&T outage kind of seems like happened months ago now. But now the FCC has decided to launch an outage probe. I thought we all sort of agreed, like, it was a solar flare or 2 solar flares or whatever. But we all knew that was sort of secretly bullshit. So I don't know why everyone sort of was on board with, it was just a solar flare, it's fine. I don't know why the FCC decided to open up the books again and say we're going to pretend to do our job, or maybe they will do their job. I don't know. Interesting to see what comes of that. No other color other than they've launched the outage probe. So I guess we'll watch that, but I think it's going to come down to a similar story about the Wuhan flu. They're going to keep going with the solar flare, the wet market sort of excuse, and say, that's, is inconclusive, so that's got to be it, when a cyber attack is sort of the only logical conclusion of what really happened there. But whatever. The next one. I've spoken a little bit about making wise choices, especially when it comes to investing in kit, guns, ammunition, training, whatever. Because times are tough right now. Sorry, my voice is going to crack. It's going to cut out. It's going to sound a little raspy because St. Patrick's Day was yesterday for me. So you're going to have to forgive that. But I had warned, with inflation the way it is, and, it being higher for longer than a lot of analysts are saying, or what anyone would really hope for, to spend your money wisely. And just be cognizant of that, just day to day, as well as your kit investments, and trying to avoid panic buying and all that as best as possible. In that sort of light, St. Powell, basically warned of more bank failures. His quote actually was, "There will be bank failures." That's what he said last week. Due to, the losses from commercial real estate loans, that was the direct sort of thing that he quoted that would drive more bank failures. But, and this was the thing I highlighted because this was very telling and very interesting, he went on to say they won't pose a risk to the entire system, and it won't be the big banks. Okay. So in other words, the government will let the small credit unions and regional banks fail so that their best friends at JP Morgan and whatnot will absorb all these little failed banks and expand. They will buy these banks at a discount or nothing at all because the government will allow them. They will grant their blessing to do so. And if you think that's not going to happen, that's ridiculous. That's exactly what happened during the last bank failure. I think it was First Republic Bank. They went under. The government, without any sort of vote, it would seem, or any sort of hesitation, the next day came out and said JP Morgan is going to basically purchase the remaining assets of First Republic and take it over and hold up their depositors and everything to make sure that there was still faith in the financial system as a whole and nobody freaked out. So JP Morgan expanded exponentially. And I'm sure the same happened with Silicon Valley and Synovus Bank. Or is it Synovus? Definitely Silicon Valley Bank. There's another one, another sort of West Coast bank. I forget what it was now. I'm sure that they were absorbed by people that the government said, yep, it's theirs now. And we know it's no secret that Mr. Diamond is buddy-buddy with the feds. So that is concerning again because your representatives, who we all know act only in our best interest, have are simply going to grant, or they're going to pave the yellow brick road with these bank failures for their biggest donors, their best friends, to have first dibs at a discounted price of territory expansion and larger just balance sheets, which is absolutely fucking crazy. And you're going to have no say in that. Nope. It's simply going to go to the people who scratch their back the most so that they can keep doing the same thing. And furthermore, if we sort of look down this rabbit hole a little further, JP Morgan, just use an example here because First Republic, they refused to offer services for those who spoke out, against the jab, who were, they literally, I forget the doctor's name, I have to look it up. They basically said, we're no longer going to allow you to bank with us. Find somewhere else to bank. All of our financial services are basically shut off for you. I'm not sure if it's I know Bank of America did this, so they're also in this big Wall Street bank group as well. They were a part of the group that froze assets for the Canadian truckers. They were part of the group that reported people who were just in the area of Washington, D.C. on that 6th of January. But they kept Epstein's accounts fully operational and running, and they are still paying out to victims and victims' families. You don't really see that on the news. That's not really announced or widespread, but they're still very much doing that. And those are the people that are going to just absorb and grow and only benefit from everyone hurting, and all just keep an eye out for that. Keep spending your money wisely, keep saving your money, just know that things may be a little uglier for longer. I hope I'm wrong, but it's a real possibility, especially with a lot of volatility and instability growing in the United States, I would say, just with the whole immigration thing, and planes flying out of the sky. Thank you, DEI, across the board. You're doing great things for this awesome nation. Spend your money, take care of yourself, your family first, stuff like that, and control your controllables, I guess. And in today's edition of Uncle Ted's Corner, there was a report done by Bloomberg, an article written by Bloomberg about AI bias, and I love this. I love watching AI just absolutely turn around and bite these companies in the ass who worship it like a fucking deity. So anyways, Bloomberg essentially used ChatGPT to generate 8 different resumes, and then edited the resumes to have the same level of education, years of experience, and job titles. But the only difference, or the key differences rather, were the names of these sort of fictional candidates that they created. And the names, they stated, were statistically associated with men or women who were either black, white, Hispanic, or Asian. And after asking ChatGPT to run the exercise 1,000 times, basically to place, do we want this resume to be a financial advisor? Do we want this resume to be an HR specialist? Do we want this resume to be ... After they ran that sort of exercise 1,000 times, they found that there were clear signs of name-based discrimination, just totally based on the names on the resumes, where they disproportionately affected people based on the type of position. And unfortunately, names distinct to Black Americans were the least likely to be ranked as the top candidate for a financial analyst role compared to the resumes with names associated with other races and ethnicities. There are several tables in the article. I'll try to find the pictures and paste them up here to show which position associated which race as the top candidate. But overall, I believe, let me see. Yes, overall, the top ranked resumes from top to bottom: Asian first, white second, Hispanic third, and fourth were the Black African Americans, just overall. And if the AI were to treat all these resumes equally, each of the 8 demographic groups would be ranked as the top candidate 1/8 of the time. However, the answers became so skewed over running it so many times that specifically Asian women were ranked as the top candidate specifically for the financial analyst role, and that came out to be twice as more often as those with names distinct to black men. Um, so I guess AI is not going to be this champion of DEI, this all-seeing, objective, all-knowing God that you all wish it would be. And that goes back to beware the frailty of man. And I know we're talking about AI here, but somewhere, somehow, a man had to program this AI. And taking it back further, the sources that this AI was trained on were created by man at some point as well. It's just going to have bias. It's going to be skewed no matter what. And furthermore, when you put it in the hands of Bloomberg, Google, or Meta, whoever the fuck, doesn't matter who, they're going to have biases as well. And they're going to make sure that thing is leaning the way they want it to line up with their ideologies. That's just how it's going to work. So stay cognizant of that. AI is neat. It's cool. It's interesting. But like, it's just a search engine with a little more automation. That's it. I don't hold it too highly. Yes, it can do cool things. It can help you cheat. It can help create cool art. It can help create songs. That's really cool. That's fun. I'm not blown away by it. And I put a little footnote here because underneath this article, Bloomberg pasted another link to an article, and the headline just read, JP Morgan will continue hiring in China for its asset management business as it remains committed to operating in the world's second largest economy. Hilarious, because the article's whole point about AI was that it gave the financial analyst position to Asians twice as many times more than it did the black men. And then Bloomberg just straight up admitting, oh yeah, the world's doing that, so that's totally fine. Thought that was pretty goofy. Continuing down the Uncle Ted corridor here. Oh yes, this one was very interesting. I saw this on the Morning Brew when I was catching up on some emails at work. The headline reads, "Cars are covertly tattling to insurance companies about your bad driving." The New York Times found that some car manufacturers are sharing drivers' data with insurance companies, sometimes without their consent. And that's a pretty good meme on the article page. But essentially, in your sales contract now for these newer vehicles, there are steps basically that you agree to if you want the fucking car, that they can sell your information to insurance companies who pay them for it. You don't get any money off your sales price. You don't see any benefit for that other than your insurance rates just going up, because I highly doubt they're using the good data to drive your rates down. Because if you didn't know about it, why the fuck would they do that? They're simply just going to fuck you with that information. So if you are in the market for a new car, a lease, or whatever, maybe I don't know if it's just the leases that allow them to do that. I don't know if I were to buy a new car that someone just drove off the lot and sold it to me, and I went with a different insurance company, if that would still be happening. Something to think about, something to consider. I would love to know if that's the case, though. If after this, if I am now the second owner of that new car, like if it's a 2024 Jeep, someone leased it, bought it out, sold it to me, then, with 2 miles on the clock or whatever, would that car still be reporting to whatever insurance company, or any insurance company for that matter, once it's under my possession? Something to think about, something to really consider. That one was crazy, though. I figured that was happening. I knew there were those little OBD sort of port plugins that you can do, but you sign up for those with your insurance company to sort of get a customized rate based on how you drive. If you're a really slow driver, you don't drive much, you ride around with that for 3 months or so, and then the rate you get back is dependent upon how you drive, how quickly you stopped, how quickly you accelerated, how often you're driving, how far you're driving, where you're driving. But again, you opt into those. You willingly plug that thing into your car, versus this just being buried somewhere in your sales contract with the car company is wild. And then this one made me smile. For my fellas that are on the dating apps, I genuinely believe hope is on the way. And I say that for 2 reasons. 2 articles came across my desk in the same day within 15 minutes of each other that sort of coincided. And the first one was that dating apps are losing their spark. Basically saying it's been over a decade since, the peak of the dating apps when they really came out and really got into swing. It turns out, the generation that was really dependent upon those, or the generations that really leaned on those, are sort of on their way out. They don't really appeal to a lot of the newer generations. which is a good thing, honestly, because they're not good. And I've shared my thoughts and my experience on them when I was a single man. But the next article said Pinterest launches body type tool. Now, hang with me. The article reads, users who flock to Pinterest for fashion and wedding inspiration may soon notice a change. The social media company's latest feature lets US users refine results in the two categories by body type. We want users to be able to see themselves reflected in their search results, says Chief Product Officer Sabrina Ellis. There is no terminology associated with each selection. People pick the range of bodies they'd like to see in various outfits based on a set of 4 photos. And then during beta testing, the tool increased engagement by 66% on the site. Riding this train to its logical destination, I think we're going to get what we have always dreamed for, which is being able to filter and or sort results or potential matches on a dating app or site by weight or body type, which I think is only fair because you're allowed to do so by age. On many, you're allowed to do so by height, by many other factors that are completely out of one's control. However, one of the very rare things that are in your control is your weight, is your appearance for the most part. So why the fuck is that never an option? AI may be doing something good for the boys here who are on the apps. God bless you if you are. I really hope it works out for the best. But, if you hold strong, if you write it out, you may see the day when that happens. And if it does, please let me know first. I will be on the streets singing the praises and letting the world know that we have made it. There's still more women working at home, but we can at least filter them by their weight now. We're still in Uncle Ted's corridor, by the way. The SAT goes digital. Surely this won't help to further devalue higher. That was a bad one. Higher education any further than it already is, and it's certainly not going to further lead to less literate individuals as testing standards are either completely disregarded, are either lowered tremendously, or are adjusted essentially to meet the lowest common denominator to make things look better, like making tests easier because kids are illiterate or don't know math. So surely by only lowering the rigor of the test, they'll be smarter. No, the numbers just look better and your school won't get shut down. That's all that does. No problem with the SAT going digital, and surely people won't cheat. There's just no way they would cheat on an online SAT. But also, I thought I did read colleges got rid of the standardized testing. I know the ACT was sort of on its way out and they were switching to the SAT, but I've also read that colleges, or many big colleges actually have just thrown away the requirement together, so I don't really know. But whatever. I'm just glad I'm not taking that stupid test anymore. I was an English guy. I would 36 on the ACT, perfect score on the English, and then after that, God take the wheel because it was like a scatter shot, just random best, give me out of this fucking thing. This next thing could still be counted in Uncle Ted's corner. But that concludes Uncle Ted's, what did I call it? This might be a reoccurring segment where we just talk about the horrors of technology and society today. Uncle Ted's corner. Yeah, we'll call it that. I think going forward, I'll keep that in mind. But something that's been happening, just happened in Chicago, being the biggest city to do something like this. How progressive. The city's passing the ceasefire resolutions or the proposals for ceasefires in Gaza. And to take a step back, I count this as potentially an Uncle Ted sphere, looking at over-socialization and lack of meaning and people latching on to shit that is completely outside of their control, but it sounds like a good thing and it's associated with some false sense of purpose, so it's their new personality. But I see this happen, and when you see the gavel drop, when you see that they passed this, resolution or this proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza, you see all these college degenerates, I guess is the only way to put it. That gives degenerates a bad name. Degenerates are fucking cool people. They drink, they're having a good time. They're definitely not there. They're not worried about gay Chicago, ceasefire shit in nations that we have no business being involved in. That goes both ways, I know. They're just, yeah, whatever. But how sad is it to see so many people, who stood up, who cheered, were hugging, who were just crying, who were overjoyed to see that the great city of Chicago passed a ceasefire proposal or resolution for Gaza. And how sad is it to see so many people who feel so powerless in their own home that they feel like they can achieve some sense of purpose and have a better chance of getting their representatives to pass a ceasefire proposal in Gaza rather than actually doing anything to fix their broken city that could just very much resemble Palestine anyways. You're fuck it. You're just as likely to get capped in Chicago as you are over there. I said it. This literally is a fucking wet dream for your local cities, especially your failed fucking cities. Gavin Newsom, whatever the fuck that cunt is in New York, you name it. Pick any failed fucking metropolis. If they had a group of dumb fuck college kids like those who sat in the chambers and had an orgy after it passed, that would be their ticket. That would be their, Newsom's identity. He would fucking be just as elated if a group like that came to him, because that means he doesn't have to focus on his actual fucking job and fix and clean up the mess that he made. Chicago, I can go through the shooting numbers, I can go through the drug numbers, I can go through whatever fucking numbers you want in Chicago, all the stores leaving, all the, major retailers seeking the door. And meanwhile, you have these fucking, these are the illiterate kids, by the way. These are the kids who couldn't pass a standardized test, or the test was made so fucking easy for them, where they spelled their name right, they checked, which person was treated unfairly, in America's inception and during, the civil rights era, and then they passed and went on to college, and are now working in your HR department and writing you citations. It's just it's just fucking crazy that those people, whatever. I can spiral down this. I see that and it drives me nuts, because these people are literally victims in their own fucking backyard, and they're latching on to something that is so completely out of their fucking control that it's sad. But also, your city passing, the city of Chicago is going to send that letter over to Israel, going to send that letter up to like Biden or Pelosi or whatever. Oh, you think that they're just going to say, oh, you know what, Chicago gets it, guys. They know a thing or two about ceasefires and, just stopping guns and shooting and violence altogether. Let's send this up to Israel. Let's tell them it's done. Chicago says no more. And I'm sure all the defense contractors would be happy to do it. I'm sure your representatives would be happy as well to pass up on their royalties and dividends payments and returns in their investments for said contractors. It's just insane. They went into this war without your vote. They're going to continue this war without your vote. But actually, it's interesting. The very same people who stood in that chamber and made love to each other after the resolution was passed in Chicago are probably going to end up seeing themselves drafted to go fight for Israel at some fucking point, honestly, if we continue down this path, or whatever war it could be. It could be Ukraine, Israel, pick any fucking Taiwan, pick any fucking country we decide to don our greatest ally. And with military enrollment or enlistment rates so far down, mandatory draft could come back if not enough illegals join the military, which isn't a good idea anyways, but a very real possibility the way I see it. The same people who made that their identity are very well may get thrown an M4 and told to fight for our greatest ally. Landing that plane, it's an Airbus, it's landing, don't worry. Something I learned, this is batshit crazy, something I learned last week was that we have this 100-mile constitution free zone, which essentially is 100 miles from all of our borders, so mainland United States, Alaska, Hawaii, 100 miles from the border, from the oceans, and the Mexico border, which we know is lawless anyways, the Canadian border. There's a 100-mile wall essentially all around that. Imaginary, of course. There's no wall here. Didn't mean to hit that. Where there are no rights, there are no laws. The government's just allowed to do whatever they deem appropriate for national security. I didn't know this. This was news to me. This was never taught in school. I've never heard of this before. And apparently, it gets even worse because if there's an international airport, that also counts like a constitutional free zone. There's a 100-mile radius around the airport, and I want to check that to make sure I'm right. But I don't know if anyone ever voted on this. I don't know if this was like a 9/11 thing or what. I'm going to have to do a little bit more research on when this constitution free zone started. But that's fucking insane. Something to keep in mind. I guess they can just deem, or whenever they bring back eminent domain and make that a big deal again, I'm sure they can just slap that label on whatever the fuck they want, and goodbye rights. Something else to keep in mind too, if you have any relatives still saying that we have freedoms and the Constitution applies everywhere and it's absolute, it's not. They can just say this is a Constitution free zone now because XYZ, and off to the races your rights go. But speaking of the border, let's run the mental exercise of picking apart the flying of immigrants into the U.S. for free, simply for optics looks like. And for those who aren't aware, I'm going to jump ahead a bit by reading this little article, or blurb from an article, and then bring it back to the flying of immigrants for free, which is crazy. But Senate Democrats voted unanimously against a bill that would have stopped counting illegal immigrants as part of the census used for assigning population-based numbers towards the Electoral College. In 2021, President Biden signed an executive order to allow illegal immigrants to be figured into the population when deciding how many electors each state has. This allows states that have large numbers of illegal immigrants to have greater representation in the House of Representatives and Electoral College. States with the greatest populations have more of an impact on what candidates are elected. Sanctuary cities in blue states attract more illegal immigrants. Republicans argue illegal immigrants are being used to swap the outcome of future elections. So again, they voted unanimously against a bill that would have stopped counting these people as part of the census. Then that obviously deems how many reps you get in the House and in the Electoral College. Got it? Bring it back to the flying of immigrants. During a U.S. Senate Intelligence Worldwide Threats Assessment hearing, come up with something different, make it snappy, make it short, guys. The director of the Federal Bureau of Investigations admitted that there are a wide array of very dangerous threats that emanate from the border in regards to gangs and fentanyl. The director further warned that there is a particular network where some of the overseas facilitators of the smuggling network have ISIS ties that we're very concerned about. And he confirmed that the network also has ties to other terrorist organizations. Cool. So not only ISIS, other terrorists coming in, they can vote one way, and the president literally said he is flying immigrants into mainland U.S., completely foregoing the border issue altogether for free, without ID, without anything, simply for optics' sake.
The Biden administration is quietly continuing efforts to resettle migrants across the U.S. by flying plane loads of young migrants into suburban New York City. Charter flights from Texas to New York and other parts of the country have been shuttling migrants to new homes since August, according to a report by the New York Post. Roughly 2,000 migrants apprehended at the U.S.-Mexico border have been brought to one airport near White Plains, New York, in just the past 2 months. Resettlement flights have also been spotted landing in Florida. The flights come amid the Biden administration's months-long struggle to get the situation at the southern border under control. Encounters with undocumented immigrants at the border hit a 21-year high over the summer. Border Patrol officials encountered nearly 200,000 people along the southern border in the month of July alone. Biden administration officials have defended their immigration policies by claiming they are removing most undocumented immigrants who arrive through Mexico, and by saying publicly that the border is closed. But thousands of migrants have been let into the U.S. with a notice to appear in court at a much later date, as the Biden administration works to resettle them in communities across the country.
That was printed. That was made public knowledge. They just said that. They just pissed in your fucking mouth and you swallowed it and said, "Thank you. Can I have more? I can't wait to vote this year." That's crazy. You cannot hop on a plane unless you take your fucking shoes off, and yet you still might get fondled. These people show them, first of all, these people have a smartphone that's charged somehow if they're walking thousands of miles across our border and are seeking refuge. Somehow they have an iPhone that has the Homeland Security CBP1 app, I think it's what it's called, that I'm going to download this app because they can just hop on a plane for free without ID and just go wherever. Just, random pick a flight, random number generator, test your luck, wild card, anywhere in the U.S., one free ticket sort of thing. And I'm paying at least $800 per flight. I am getting groped in the airport. I am eating shitty bagels and paying $13 for a coffee. And I think that's just nuts. And then knowing what we know about the threats coming across the border, and not even just these, hype, what's the word I'm looking for here? Soundbite generators that are these Senate hearings, where you get the intelligence guys saying we have more red flags in here than ever before. Yeah, what the fuck are you doing about it then, smart ass? Thanks for letting me know. You're gonna do your fucking job. You're gonna shoot someone's dog. So that's happening. They can also vote, and we're just gonna stop counting them apparently. No, so we're gonna count them, but only towards votes. And obviously the cities that we know they're going to, based on just the crime headlines alone: New York, California, Chicago, the greatest failed monuments of our failure and of government's failure to exist in this country. I see no issue with that. And then you take into consideration the possibility of them joining our military, being enlisted in our military because of how low the numbers are, and the prospect of a very obedient, very violent makeup of a military of these illegals that will absolutely fight for the representatives of us, I do believe, because they gave them a job, they let them in, they gave them a home, they gave them free flights, they gave them free gender changes. They will absolutely slaughter the natural U.S. citizens. So you can think about that too on your commute or while you're sitting at your desk. And speaking of race and failed cities, I gotta look. I don't know which prison this is in. I'm going to double check the state and the city. But this came across my feed again. And in one prison, the ethnicity of, I'm not going to say all the inmates, but a certain makeup of inmate was listed as white when they were not white. In fact, they were very clearly across the board one specific race, a certain percentage of the population that commits a disproportionate number of crimes. And actually, that percentage is way, way smaller, actually, that commit so many crimes, because that percentage also includes women and children. So that's cool. So whenever you hear someone say this, white extremism, these violent whites are the biggest threat to our democracy, let's go look into the numbers and make sure we're not getting statistically gaslit. Because it turns out it's a very real thing that some ideologue in some state-run position, of course, went in and just straight up changed the ethnicity of prisoners in a federal or state prison, doesn't matter, to make the numbers appear different, or that they didn't appear like they were offensive or disproportionately, hurting or labeling black people as criminals, when objectively they are in a prison. It's kind of hard to ignore the fact that they look a certain way. Do your fucking, it's nuts. So I'll post those pictures up because I thought that was crazy. You cannot believe headlines anymore. You cannot believe articles anymore. You are going to be gaslit to oblivion. And that's sort of like this sort of, white supremacy, white extremists are the biggest threat to our democracy. That's no different than the articles saying like drinking or consuming too much protein. Yeah, it literally said consuming too much protein is bad for you or bad for your heart or bad for your liver, whatever it was. But when you actually looked into that article, it turns out they were simply using like those bottles of Ensure as like the protein intake in the model or in the test subjects. It wasn't red meat. It wasn't anything natural. It was a little plastic bottle of Ensure. That was the only source of protein that was able to be like sort of used in that study. It's the same fucking difference here. You're being statistically gaslit to believe some stupid fucking narrative that some stupid fucking moron holds and is trying to push, because what's true and what's actually happening doesn't line up with what makes them feel good. Do your research. Don't believe, what you see on the surface, what you hear on the news, what you see on social media. There's usually a lot more to it. And patterns typically don't change quickly or very often. So litmus test, idiot test it. Don't be emotionally driven to conclusions or while you're sort of doing your research or you're digging. Pretty basic stuff that people who have jobs of informing the public and have a lot of power should know this sort of baseline, but they've just thrown that completely out the window. So it's up to us now to keep them in check and call them out. So do your homework. And with that, let's talk about gun stuff. Let's talk about some real fun stuff now. T-Rex Arms, the Jackal review was not great. Just straight up, not an excellent showing for the Jackal, but not the first time we have seen Palmetto fall flat on their face in a review. Grantham obviously being a great example of a tremendous catastrophic failure of a weapon system during a high-profile YouTube review. However, this is where Palmetto sort of shines. Better than any other company I found, Palmetto is superb at being communicative and being open, admitting when they fuck up, and turning around saying, here's the issue with that. Here's what we've done to our production to make all future models better. And if you have an impacted or a bad older model, send it in. We'll upgrade it. We'll give it back. It might take a little long because we're going to get a lot of those, but we will fix it and we'll make sure any more rolling off the line don't have the prevalent issue that was caused from a manufacturing sort of oversight or some issue. Long story short, T-Rex Arms ran 5,000 rounds through the Jackal, different drills, different sights, suppressed, unsuppressed, and right out of the box, the gas key for the adjustable gas block didn't work. If for whatever reason it was either fully on or fully off. They were able to fix that. Mine works no problem, I will say, but again, I don't have 2,000 rounds through it. I probably have 12 to 1,500 only through it at the moment. I got to get better at shooting it. Two other issues that they had, and the latter that I was going to state, but I'll state it now because I think it might have been related to the gas block. A lot of ejection issues, where we saw that the round wouldn't fully eject before the bolt would close, and it caused a decent amount of damage to the finish of the upper receiver, especially around that ejection port. I'm not sure if that got better once they were actually able to figure out the gas block and get a gas block correctly. And then the other one was the barrel coming loose at only 1,000 rounds. There's two torque spits, larger torque spits towards the base of the handguard that hold the barrel in. And at about 1,000 rounds, those became finger loose and the barrel was just wobbling around loosely. Took it apart. They saw that there was not a lot of Loctite on those screws, so they screwed it back up. They shot it up with Loctite, screwed it up, and it was fine. I pulled mine out just to check, make sure all those screws were tight. They were cranked down pretty good. And furthermore, when I looked inside of the handguard near the top, because there are Torx bits running up the handguard, two at the very top towards the muzzle device, I thought I had cut myself on the handguard at one point, but no, it turns out they put so much Loctite on those screws that it's literally weeping red Loctite. And I'll put those pictures up because I have those pictures. So no shortage of Loctite on mine. I don't think I'm going to have the barrel issue that was seen, but I'll keep checking those after I take it to the range from here on out just to be extra sure. My gas port does work and haven't had any ejection issues, not even a single one yet, other than when I, started gassing or testing out the gas block, turn it all the way off, obviously, and progressively turned it up or turned it down until I had it all the way up, turned it down until it stopped. ejecting, and then turned it back up until it ejected at the proper sort of angle. Other than that, it ejected just fine. Obviously, that wasn't a failure. That was just me finding the point of failure, finding when it was undergassed, and then gassing it up from there. I was also extremely vindicated because when I first got the Jackal, it looks cool. It's the ACR we have at home. It's different from an AR. It's a piston build. It's something different, and it's cool to look at. Got mine in FTE. The upper's FTE. The lower is still blackout painted anyways. First observation before I put anything on it, any sight, any laser, any light, was, wow, this is a very front-heavy gun. And all I heard was, oh, it's a piston system. It's going to be heavier. Hit the gym. Grow up. It's a heavy fucking gun. Like, compared to any AR you're ever going to hold, anything that does the exact same thing it does, it's heavier. I've held other piston ARs. They are lighter than the Jackal by a very noticeable level. And that was an observation that was made there. It was a very front-heavy gun, to which I said, absolutely. But all in all, not a great review, considering the issues that it had out of the box and showed on the range. I think Palmetto will obviously sort that out with them, and they'll report back on how it was remedied and what they had to say. My Jackal doesn't have that issue. Obviously, it seems to be a little bit better so far. Again, only 1,200 rounds in. Now, would I recommend the Jackal personally to somebody? No, not the 14.5 5.56 one that I have. Not only because it looks like the Jackal may suffer from sporadic QC issues, as it is still a very new platform. I do actually remember that the first run of Jackals ever put out had a lot of issues, and people really weren't that impressed. But they have gotten much better with the newer sort of iteration and the ones rolling off the line now, so they could still continually improve. But the 5.56 version of it, is it cool? Yes, like I mentioned, it's different. It's kind of neat, but it's not. I don't think 5.56 is the right platform or the right sort of caliber for that. I think the sweet spot for the Jackal would exist in those really short 300 black uppers that they make for it. So I think if you're in the market for 300 black or are currently starting to look at, do I want to go down the route of 7.62 by 39 or 300 black for like a secondary sort of, ammunition to carry and load up on? Do your homework, do your research if you land on 300 black and maybe the Jackal's, your thing. However, I could find a side charging upper that shoots suppressed much more impressively than a normal AR upper would in 7.62 or by 300 black for much cheaper than the Jackal, and it'd be much lighter. It would do the exact same thing. Again, it's all personal preference. You start looking at these things. I do think a shorty 300 black Jackal suppressed would be really fucking cool, though. I think I would probably recommend that. I don't have it myself. All I can say is I like the one I have now, the 14.5 5.56. It has grown on me despite its weight, its heft. I got an upgraded trigger in there. It's really fun to shoot suppress, even though it's super fucking heavy with the laser light combo I have up front and the can, as well as its overall heft. It shoots flat as shit because it weighs 45 pounds, obviously, and because the trigger I have on it is so light. It's a lot of fun in that regard. But she's a thick bitch, What can I say? The shorty 300 black would be what I would recommend, and I'll sort of just leave it at that. But that's just me personally. Go pick one up. Go play with one. They're cool. They're kind of neat. That being said, new build time. And I know we've all run into this, right? You have an extra lore receiver. You bought like a dagger frame from PSA, and it was a special, so you got like a blemished lore receiver with it. And you say to yourself, I'll just keep it in the safe in case, I need it as a backup if something fails or breaks. Who are you fucking kidding? You're just going to use it as an excuse to start another build. And that's exactly what I did, you autistic fuck. After running the CQB League a little bit, I do not have a sort of go-to CQB or like 5.56 like shorter build. The Jackal's a 14.5. It's pin and welded. That's the shortest 5.56 rifle I own. I have a 10.5 7.62 by 39 AR pistol, which is very cool, very fun. Also very fun to shoot suppressed. But I want something in 5.56. So I'm going down the 12.5 route, and I was looking at either BCM or KAK. None of the ones I wanted on their site. The barrel length and handguard combinations have been out of stock for a while, and they weren't going to restock. Or rather, they didn't have an ETA for when they were going to restock. And then I came across a brand called Ballistic Advantage that was constantly being compared to BCM with just as glowing reviews. And it turns out they're a very reputable company. I just never looked at their stuff, really considered them. And the more I looked, the more impressed I became. So I ended up picking a 12.5 Ballistic Advantage upper with a nickel boron bolt carrier group. And I got $100 off with a coupon, which was really fucking cool. So I got that for like $580 something, I think. A steal, all things considered. And I didn't throw... The reason why I was also cheap because I didn't have a muzzle device or a charging handle. I had a Radian Raptor blemish sitting around here I threw in there. And I had a spare ASR flash hider from my Silencer Co. Chimera, which is still... So, for those of you who don't know, the third time I ever shot that can, I put it into the backstop of a local range here. Ready? Stand by. On a shoot night with the fellows, and we were all downrange. Mount failed, or I was a retard and didn't lock it properly. But again, this was at the first drill. I wasn't tired or anything when I did it. Just took off downrange, small baffle strike. But mailed it in under warranty. Been sitting there for weeks. I finally email like, hey, what's up? Like, where's my can? They're like, oh, haven't you heard? All of like our hybrid cans are recalled, and so those took priority. So I'm behind all of the hybrid cans now that had to be repaired. I'm getting a Surefire next. But I had a spare ASR flash hider, so I just threw that on there for now to save some money. And this is really a build that I want to take my time and build somewhat methodically. I want to get out. I want to shoot it. I want to train with it. But I'm going to use parts that I have sort of laying around that I have amassed, but they're going to be high quality parts. If I don't have the high quality part that I want to sort of meet the vibe of the build, I guess, I'll wait until, it makes sense financially, whether that part goes on sale or I find a very good price to acquire it and throw it on. So I have the upper, again, sitting just on a PSA, lower, but lower's a lower. It's aluminum. It fits pretty well, actually. I'm waiting for trigger. I want to put a Geisley trigger in it. So I'm watching for, primary arms, waiting for that to pop up. The nickel boron, I want a silent capture in it as well, because I've heard those are a fucking dream to shoot with. Looking forward to that. I would love a lead and steel Promethean optic. I am absolutely flogging myself for not buying those when the price tag started with a 3 and now it's a 6. Big oops. But for now I had actually, I'll speak on this later. Some guy in the group chat, the local group chat of idiots here, had a spare Romeo 5 that he'd only shot once with the box still. He didn't like it on the FAL. He had tried putting it on, so he said I could have it. So I just paid $8 for shipping, and it's on the way here. So Sig Romeo 5, just going to live on it so I can at least get out and train with it and get familiar with it, which is very cool, by the way. He just sent it over for free. And then I got like an SB Tactical, just brace on it, because I'm not interested in that nonsense, despite the ATF, in a very rare customer service and HR positive mood, came out and said, the new norm is processing your Form 4 in like days, not weeks. I don't believe them. There's just no way. So I probably will SBR it at some point when I'm bored and I know they're actually going to do it quickly, but I want another can first. I'm not really worried, the SP Tactical brace it's very comfortable, actually. It's not bad. But this is like going to be my first like Gucci sort of go-to like build that I'm going to have a lot of confidence in, because I know the parts in it are going to be solid and reliable. Let's see. I think that's probably going to be it. Oh, I mean, as far as like laser lights go, I'd love to find like a gray market, sort of used military powered laser. Whenever that happens, who knows? But I'll probably put like a vampire on the end of it, for now, just until that laser comes across, and I'll be able to sort of fulfill that. So that's the plan for that rifle. I'll keep everyone in the loop on how I like the Ballistic Advantage upper. So far, it seems very well put together. Very much impressed. And oh God, what was the thing about inflation? Um, oh, this is sort of circling back on a topic where I could have included this when I was talking about banks and failing and whatnot, and I sort of had a hungover thought um, while at work, reading article after article about inflation. It's pretty indisputable that the economy is the way that it is because of how governments decided to completely fuck the global economy in the name of safety during the Wuhan flu. And that's pretty hard to dispute. Inflation followed, the housing issues followed, the employment issues followed, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, the Israel and Russia conflicts will, they'll obviously add to uncertainty and volatility in certain commodities, especially when it comes to like grain or oil, like we saw, or natural gas. Like, that's going to happen. But that's not going to have an impact on your Taco Bell order or the price of a house or how much groceries are, right? Like, we're seeing what we're seeing. It's the ripple effect from the global supply chain and economy being bent over and absolutely railed. So I don't really want to hear anyone, not a single masked up, boosted 5 times retard, and especially not a representative of mine, bemoaning the cost of things because of how bad inflation is and how it disproportionately impacts, insert whatever skin color and or sexual orientation here. This is literally the cost of staying safe, of being healthy, after all, according to those exact people. The New York Times, the press, the government. These were all the people who said you have to do this for the name of safety, and now they're the same people moaning about how fucking expensive everything is. Like, this is literally the cost that you said we would have to pay for our safety and for our health. And freedom was very obviously negotiable when it came to this price at the time. So, like, the price tag of things now, for these people rather, should seem a little bit marginal because we gladly gave up freedoms to stay safe and healthy. And now they can't gorge their mouths with, rotisserie chickens from Kroger or whatever the fuck. It's a big deal now. But, like, a new thought I sort of had on this while drunkenly being a prophet, or analyzing this, if you will. If you find yourself standing, toe-to-toe with one of these theoretical delusionists, I would just ask them how their choices are really working out for them, because we find ourselves, face-to-face with these people all the time, and, we're both still alive after all. However, I never wore like a mask. Like, I wear this for protection, like my own identity protection. This isn't going to keep me safe or healthy. Like, I never wore this during COVID or into a grocery store because I was trying to be healthy or keep other people safe. I never, believed or got the jab. I never believed a word that the news or the government spat downward at either of us too. We both received the same information. We both saw the same propaganda, I think is how I'd rather word that. And I chose that was bullshit, and you simply deep-throated it. And honestly, looking at this, how we're both still walking, because we are face-to-face in this moment, how we both received the same propaganda, but I can almost say that the results and the outcomes in our lives are going to be not so similar. I would say I am going to be happier and healthier. That's for sure. I'm going to be in much better shape physically and mentally, naturally. I'm going to have with us bumper stickers on my car as well as number of pronouns or colors, pronouns in my bio or colors in my hair. And so it's that weird sort of two separate experiences being lived, very, very different, very, opposite experiences being lived by two people who were very much in the same world, seeing the same things, but digesting and acting upon it differently. And then watching that ripple effect happen in two different paths play out. And yes, we're both suffering under high inflation, but I can look at that person and know that they sold everything that made them like a human being. They sold their natural rights. They sold their freedom in the name of state-sponsored safety, because that's exactly what it was. The state promised you would be safe, and you just believed them and gave up everything to that, all for nothing. But a less healthier life, and a less happy life, I would probably argue as well. And so I just thought that was interesting, because we all say, "Oh, COVID fucked up everything," and that's and these people are crazy. They're still wearing masks. They're still jabbed. But it was just sort of an interesting sort of viewpoint that I was able to sort of piece together while drunk. And I don't really know what the point or takeaway was of that, but maybe you'll get some peace next time you're face to face with that person in the grocery store, and you can just be like, "Yep, that's crazy. We looked at the exact same thing, and that's your life, huh? All right. Well, anywho, what I want to end it on is community, because our little local group of idiots is truly impressive. I mean, just truly stunning. So the ICU pre-order is closed. Thank you to all those who purchased items, and those who donated directly. And for those who don't know, we ran a fundraiser for a friend of ours who was in need of some legal assistance. He was an ex like EMT, ex tradesman turned EMT. He works part time at a local gun range. Just a really, really, really good, nice, smart dude. He unfortunately found himself in a bad situation where he was in need of legal representation, but didn't have the money. He had recently lost his primary source of income. He also, as a result of the event that took place, ended up losing the roof over his head, and he had to find a new place for he and his girlfriend to stay, all while without a job. He had a side gig at the range still, but obviously that's not going to pay the bills. That's not going to get you in a new home. And so we started the IC, or rather, a gentleman in our local group chat, the guys we go shooting with, created the ICU design and offered it up, just for whatever. We decided to sell that as patches and as stickers, to help support our friend, and donate all the proceeds from that to help him hire the best lawyer possible, just to ensure the best possible outcome for him, so he didn't have to worry about anything. We raised a good chunk of money. He found a great lawyer. Everything worked out great. And people donated directly to him as well without even ordering patches. Like, before we even came up with this design, he jumped in the chat, put his Cash App out there. And that's a tough thing to do, right? You kind of have to fall on your sword and be like, "Hey, here's where I'm at. I need help." And that's very hard to do, no matter who you are. He did that, and people instantly jumped in on it. We had one guy, before there was any promise of swag or anything in return for helping our buddy out, he gave him $500. And this isn't a kid, or a guy rather, who has money just to throw out. It's quite the opposite, as far as I understand. But he found it so important to help this individual out, because and it's not like he knows him or hangs out with him like every day. He's met him a couple times. We still see each other. He still sees him, we hang out. We still chat every day in the chats. But like, this is somebody who is a recent, friend, a recent connection. And this guy felt so strongly to help someone just in our community like that, and in the firearms community like that. I think that's really fucking cool. And that's just one guy. Other people donated $200, $250, $100. Many people donated $50, and more people donated like in lower denominations as well. And it's whatever you can afford, really. Every donation is like a testament to just how incredible the community that we have built here is. And I hope that gives some hope for people, seeking that community, like in your own state or your own area. Like, we grew this somewhat organically, honestly, and are continuing to nurture it. And it's super strong. Like, we're training at least once a week now, or at least a handful of us are. We got a little gig going every Friday still, with that CQB league rebooted up again. But we're talking about doing other things, rucks, we raising money for people in our community who need it. The guy who shipped the optic to me for free. There's something else too that took place. Oh yeah, I had a smoke detector that was going off, that prevented me from sleeping, because it was right over my head. My ceilings are very high here. I don't have a ladder. Guy drove over a ladder like super late at night after he got off work and just left it for me. And it's just that thing where, like, how cool and how important community is. And I think that's a good note to end it on, because there are good people out there, and they're around you. They're in your neighborhood. They're up the street. They're in your gym. They're at work. it's tough to find them initially because of our interests, especially if you're listening to this and our beliefs. It's not mainstream. They're not, promoted, or we're not told to really push them hard or let everyone know what we believe in. But they're there if you believe in it, if you put the time and the effort in, and you seek it out and you put yourself out there. If you go to range days, if you go to outings, if you, maybe you wear that autistic shirt. I don't know. Like, if you do the right thing and you put in the work and you just wait, and continue living virtuously and, training. That's how I found most of this is being plugged into the training sphere. Like, the opportunity is not just going to present itself, but little things will pop up and you're going to sort of have to take the initiative and jump in. You might see somebody shooting an interesting piece or saying they're talking about something interesting, and you have to interject yourself. You meet that guy, you go from there. Like, you have to get involved. You have to just keep your face in the fire and continually look for it and seek it out, but you will find it if that's what you do. And I think we have locked into something really, really cool here. And I'm very, very excited to continue, seeing it grow and helping it grow. Because from what I can tell, it's sort of like what you read about. We're not as advanced as, dudes in Appalachia, obviously. But there's a great mix of experience, law enforcement, maybe not law enforcement, but plenty military and ex-military. And none of the above at all, but people who are heavily invested and heavily interested in being dangerous for the safety of our loved ones and those around us. And so seek it out. Keep your head down. Keep looking for it. Or don't keep your head down, Keep your head down, do the work, stay committed, but keep your eyes open for those opportunities, because one's going to come across someday if you're active, if you're interested, if you're invested, and you got to jump on it. And when you do, it's going to be really, really good. And, don't get caught up, you hear the horror stories all the time. These groups, they get a little carried away. Some bad actors don't get punished, and the group sort of spirals. There's nothing that resembles any of that here. And I wouldn't worry about that, Find a group first, then make a judgment. Be objective, obviously. Be careful about it because, these are internet friends after all. There's plenty of feds who are looking to fuck the people following the rules and who are desperate for community because they recognize how important community is. So be careful. Don't be shouting nonsense or just showing, that dude, what's in your safe day one. I have nothing to hide, but still, if someone's asking to see what's in your safe or all that stuff, probably a fed, just be careful with it. But there's a level of trust that you gain over time with these people. And it's just a really, really good thing. And I'm just going to, I can keep talking about it because I think we got a really solid group and I'm really fired up about that. And I'm excited to see what we do. But that'll do it for this week. Sorry for getting this one out so late, and sorry it was such a rambling of different things. Excited to report back on the Ballistic Advantage Upper. I'm hoping to run it this week for class, and I will let you guys know how that is. But until then, take care.